The Friday evening crowd filled the downtown restaurant with laughter, clinking glasses, and soft chatter. Neon lights from the street outside flickered across the large windows, casting shadows over polished wooden tables. The aroma of grilled steaks and sizzling vegetables mingled with the faint scent of freshly baked bread. In the midst of the bustling energy, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell sat alone at a corner table, her back straight, posture alert despite the casual appearance of her navy blue cardigan and jeans. She sipped slowly from a glass of iced tea, eyes scanning the room with the practiced awareness of someone trained to notice the smallest details. Her bag rested beside her chair, seemingly ordinary, but inside it carried essentials she considered routine, nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. To the casual eye, Sarah looked like any other woman winding down from a long workweek, but beneath that calm exterior, she exuded an aura of subtle discipline and readiness that only those trained to observe would notice. Her fingers absent-mindedly brushed the edge of her purse, not out of fear, but habit, a signal of someone accustomed to vigilance. Across the restaurant, three men leaned against a high table near the entrance, their movements loud, careless, and intrusive. They were easily recognizable as troublemakers. One swigged from a half-empty bottle of beer, the second tapped his foot impatiently, and the third laughed loudly, his gaze roaming with predatory interest. They were not here for the food, or the camaraderie of Friday night diners. They were here to assert dominance, to provoke, to pick someone who looked small, weak, or distracted. Their eyes landed on Sarah. She seemed vulnerable, alone, a perfect target for their bravado. They exchanged quick, smug glances and started moving toward her table, one bumping into a chair intentionally as he passed to assert presence. Sarah's gaze shifted subtly, calculating the men's size, their speed, and potential threat level. Her pulse didn't quicken, but her body responded instantly, muscles tensed, mind alert, breathing measured. She wasn't intimidated, she was ready. The restaurant staff, busy with orders and table service, were unaware of the silent drama unfolding. Patrons laughed and chatted, oblivious to the impending confrontation. Yet within Sarah's corner, a tension began to grow. The men approached too confidently, underestimating her entirely. One of them, taller and broad-shouldered, grinned in a self-assured way, assuming she would recoil, assuming her stillness meant fear. Sarah didn't flinch. Instead, she made minor adjustments, shifting her weight just enough to remain balanced, her elbows close to her body, her feet planted. Every glance she gave assessed their intent, predicting possible angles of attack, calculating her response. She noticed their sloppiness, the gaps in their coordination, and the subtle tension in their movements that betrayed overconfidence. Her mind ran through options silently, analyzing how 15 seconds could determine the outcome of a potential encounter. The three men nearing her table still smiled arrogantly, unaware that the woman they believed was defenseless had faced more intense pressure than they could imagine. They didn't see the discipline etched into her posture, the reflexive readiness in her hands, or the calm clarity in her eyes. Sarah, in turn, recognized the signs of aggression, the patterns in their movements, the potential for escalation. As the first man reached for a chair near her, intending to intimidate, Sarah's body subtly shifted. Her focus sharpened, her senses expanded to the space around her. Every sound, the clatter of utensils, the chatter of nearby diners, even the distant honking of traffic outside, became part of her awareness. In the next 15 seconds, her actions would either prevent a disaster or end it. Unseen by the approaching aggressors, Sarah's mind was already in motion, calculating, anticipating, preparing. The calm before the storm hung in the air, thick and palpable, leaving everyone near her unaware that a life-altering moment was about to erupt, one that would reveal extraordinary skill behind an ordinary appearance. The first man, emboldened by overconfidence and a few too many drinks, leaned forward and shoved a chair across the aisle toward Sarah's table. The collision rattled plates and glasses, drawing startled gasps from nearby diners. The second man, taller and heavier, lunged simultaneously, attempting to grab her purse. Their movements were clumsy, rushed, and chaotic, exactly what Sarah needed. She had already anticipated their aggression, positioning herself to counter every motion. In a fluid motion, she shifted her weight onto her left foot, letting the taller man's momentum carry him past her. Her right hand subtly guided his wrist, redirecting his strength away from her. The man stumbled forward, surprised, and lost balance. A low, controlled grunt escaped Sarah's lips, not from effort but from focus. Her eyes darted to the third man, the smallest yet most unpredictable, who was circling the table looking for an opening. "Hey, step back," the first man barked, his tone more frustrated than threatening. Patrons froze, unsure whether to intervene. Waiters paused mid-step, trays trembling in their hands. The restaurant's warm, casual atmosphere transformed instantly into tense anticipation, every observer aware that something dangerous had begun. Sarah, however, remained unnervingly calm, a quiet storm in the middle of the room. Her stance was deliberate, grounded, each movement precise, each calculation measured. The taller attacker recovered and swung his arm toward her, attempting to snatch her purse again. Sarah reacted instinctively, blocking the motion with her forearm while simultaneously twisting his wrist to the side. The man yelped in pain and stumbled backward, crashing into a chair and sending a glass shattering across the floor. Glass shards skittered across the hardwood, glinting like tiny stars in the dim light. Patrons recoiled, whispers rippling through the restaurant. Meanwhile, the smallest attacker charged recklessly, shouting, unaware of the tactical advantage he was surrendering. Sarah him effortlessly, allowing his weight to carry him past her, then pivoted, gripping his upper arm and applying a controlled lock. He struggled, thrashing, but her precision was unmatched, enough to restrain him without causing serious injury. His frustration and shock were palpable, his arrogance evaporating as he realized she was far from ordinary. The second man, regaining balance, hesitated, scanning the room with a growing sense of disbelief. Every move he made seemed calculated against someone who was already steps ahead. Sarah, eyes sharp, assessed every angle. She noted the exit points, the nearest objects that could become hazards, and the positions of bystanders. Her mind moved faster than the men's aggressive attempts, cataloging every detail to maintain control and prevent escalation. Patrons began murmuring, recording the scene on phones, some standing frozen while others edged closer in disbelief. The initial panic was mingled with awe. This woman, appearing so calm and composed, was controlling the chaos effortlessly. Her movements were economical, efficient, almost clinical, yet imbued with undeniable authority. Within seconds, the aggressors began to doubt themselves, uncertainty flickering across their faces. The tallest man made a final desperate lunge, teeth gritted, muscles taut, believing sheer force could succeed where strategy had failed. Sarah anticipated the motion. She shifted, guided his arm in a circular motion, and used his momentum to unbalance him. He crashed against a table, knocking over chairs and leaving diners gasping. For a fleeting moment, the restaurant seemed suspended in time. Shards of glass, overturned chairs, stunned witnesses, and a lone woman standing unshaken amid the storm. The three men froze, their confidence shattered, each realizing their misjudgment. They had assumed an easy target. Instead, they faced a trained professional whose skills surpassed anything they expected. 15 seconds had passed, yet those moments already defined the outcome. Every movement, every reaction, every calculation was Sarah's. The calm before the storm had ended, control had shifted irreversibly, and the attackers were now the prey. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath as Sarah's eyes fixed on the first man sprawled near the shattered glass. He groaned, clutching his wrist in pain, his bravado evaporating with every second. Patrons whispered to each other, some frozen in shock, others recording the scene on their phones. Yet Sarah's gaze remained calm, her movements deliberate, her mind already analyzing the next threat. This was not panic, this was strategy, honed by years of Navy training. She assessed the remaining two attackers, predicting their reactions, anticipating their desperation. The second man, still reeling from the earlier clash, tightened his fists and tried to lunge forward again. Sarah shifted her stance subtly, planting her feet firmly. Every muscle in her body was ready. She pivoted on her heel, using the momentum of his advance to redirect his energy. Her hands gripped his wrist and elbow, guiding him into a controlled fall onto the floor. The sound of his body hitting the hardwood echoed sharply through the restaurant, punctuating the moment with authority. Patrons gasped audibly, some stepping back instinctively, realizing the fight was no ordinary scuffle. Meanwhile, the third man, the smallest but fastest, hesitated at a safe distance. Fear flickered across his face. His earlier confidence had been shattered. He now recognized he was not facing an ordinary diner, and the thought unnerved him. Sarah's gaze cut to him sharply, a warning as powerful as any physical strike. Her voice, calm yet commanding, sliced through the tension. "Stay where you are." He froze, indecision rooting him to the spot. Sarah glanced back at the first man, still struggling on the floor. She wasn't cruel, but efficiency mattered. She stepped closer, maintaining dominance while signaling control. A subtle movement, one hand pressing lightly on his shoulder, kept him subdued without unnecessary force. Every action was calculated, measured, demonstrating precision over chaos. The first man's eyes widened as he realized the magnitude of his misjudgment. In 15 seconds, he had gone from aggressor to humbled captive. Patrons whispered and muttered, astonished at the skill displayed before them. Phones captured her movements, precise, unhurried, yet undeniably lethal in effect. Chairs lay overturned, spilled drinks glistened under the restaurant lights, but the chaos had an unmistakable order, Sarah's order. Even in the middle of a violent confrontation, she controlled space, timing, and outcome. The second man groaned on the floor, attempting to push himself up, but Sarah's presence alone kept him in check. She moved with calculated steps, a subtle shift in her stance signaling readiness for any sudden movement. She had already identified weaknesses: the aggressors' uncoordinated attacks, their over-reliance on brute force, and their lack of situational awareness. Her mind cataloged every detail: who could strike where, what obstacles could be used, and how best to prevent further escalation. Suddenly, the third man made a tentative step forward. Sarah's eyes narrowed, muscles tensed for instantaneous response. With a smooth pivot and precise motion, she intercepted his advance, using his momentum to guide him into a harmless but effective sweep. He fell backward onto the cushioned bench, hitting it with a startled yelp. Patrons gasped again, some laughing nervously, others still frozen in awe. The realization dawned on all three attackers. They had underestimated someone they assumed was defenseless. The restaurant's energy shifted. The initial shock of violence had transformed into admiration and tension. Everyone watching sensed that Sarah controlled the room entirely. 15 seconds had passed, yet in that brief moment, the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. The first strike, though swift, was only the beginning. Her presence, her calm, and her deadly precision set the stage for what would come next. The attackers were no longer the hunters. They had become the hunted. With the first two men incapacitated and the third hesitant, Sarah stood poised, eyes scanning the room, calm and resolute. Her Navy training had prepared her for chaos, but her instincts ensured she maintained control. The fight had begun, but already the outcome was clear. The second man groaned as he struggled to push himself upright, pain etched across his face. His bravado had completely evaporated, replaced with fear and confusion. Sarah's movements were deliberate as she approached, her eyes locked on him, analyzing every twitch of muscle, every flicker of hesitation. She wasn't panicking, nor was she angry. She was in control. Her Navy training guided each step, ensuring her actions were precise, effective, and minimally harmful. Around her, the restaurant had become a mix of chaos and awe, with patrons whispering and watching the unfolding scene like a live-action thriller. The taller attacker attempted a desperate strike, swinging wildly in an effort to regain dominance. Sarah shifted her weight, pivoted on her heel, and let his momentum carry him forward. In a single fluid motion, she grabbed his wrist and elbow, forcing him to the ground. He crashed against a table, sending cutlery clattering and a glass rolling to the floor. Patrons instinctively recoiled, yet their fear was mingled with astonishment. Sarah's actions were controlled, deliberate, and almost effortless. every move calculated to subdue without unnecessary harm. The smallest attacker, still frozen at a distance, hesitated. His eyes darted between the subdued men and the calm woman standing in the middle of the restaurant. He realized he had underestimated her, and the growing panic in his chest made his movements erratic. Sarah's gaze flicked to him, sharp and unyielding. She raised a hand slightly, not as a threat, but as a signal of authority. "Stay," she said, her voice low, firm, and commanding. It carried weight beyond the room, a force of presence that made even the bravest hesitate. Sarah's mind processed every detail: the layout of the restaurant, obstacles, potential escape routes, and the positions of bystanders. She noticed a chair slightly tipped over near the bar and subtly shifted to ensure no one tripped. A server froze mid-step, a tray of food hovering in their hands, and Sarah's calm glance reassured them to step aside. Her situational awareness ensured that no one would be injured while she neutralized the threat. The second man tried again, this time using his size to push forward. Sarah pivoted, using his energy against him. With a controlled motion, she applied a lock on his arm and guided him to the floor with precision. His body hit the hardwood with a sharp thud, groaning from the impact and the pain of her expertly applied technique. Patrons gasped. Some applauded softly, others whispered their disbelief. It was clear. The woman they assumed defenseless was orchestrating the situation with absolute control. The smallest attacker, realizing his companions were incapacitated, began to back away slowly. He tripped over a spilled glass, scrambling to regain balance, and Sarah reacted instantly. One fluid step to the side, one precise grab of his shoulder, and he was guided gently but firmly to the floor. Panic flashed across his face as he realized resistance was futile. The room seemed to exhale collectively, the tension thick but shifting toward relief. Spilled drinks glistened under the restaurant lights, chairs were overturned, and shards of glass reflected the chaos, but Sarah's calm demeanor dominated the scene. Patrons whispered among themselves, some secretly recording, all amazed at her control. She remained aware of the environment, constantly scanning for potential threats, while ensuring no one else was hurt. Her movements were economical, precise, and strategic, every action intentional. By the time Sarah stepped back and straightened, the three attackers were subdued, groaning, and bewildered. 15 seconds had passed from the initial confrontation, yet in that brief time she had completely turned the tide. The room recognized the shift. The attackers were no longer aggressors. Every patron, every server, and every observer understood that the calm, composed woman in casual clothing was not ordinary. She commanded respect, authority, and if needed, lethal precision. The third attacker, the smallest of the three, hesitated as he watched his companion sprawled on the floor, groaning and clutching sore limbs. His bravado had evaporated entirely. Fear flickered in his eyes, mixed with disbelief. He had assumed the woman was an easy target, but the chaos unfolding in front of him shattered that illusion. He took a tentative step forward, glancing at the crowd of stunned patrons, unsure whether to retreat or continue. 15 seconds had passed, yet each heartbeat felt stretched into eternity. Sarah's gaze locked onto him, steady and unyielding. Her eyes didn't just see movement, they analyzed intent, weight distribution, and subtle cues in his posture. She anticipated his every move. He raised his fists, trembling slightly, trying to summon courage he no longer felt. Sarah's stance was deliberate, feet grounded, knees slightly bent, arms relaxed but ready. Her entire body radiated authority, a warning louder than words. "Stay where you are," she said, her voice calm, low, and firm. The words cut through the ambient noise of the restaurant, carrying a weight the man couldn't ignore. He froze, uncertainty flooding his mind. The earlier chaos, once fueled by confidence and aggression, had turned into a stark realization. He was outmatched. Every instinct screamed to flee, but panic clouded his judgment. Sarah advanced slowly, her movements controlled, each step deliberate. Patrons instinctively recoiled, giving her space as if acknowledging her command over the room. The third attacker shifted backward, glancing at the exit, calculating escape, yet his momentum betrayed him. With a fluid motion, Sarah his desperate charge, placing a hand on his shoulder and redirecting him with minimal force. His forward energy carried him off balance, and he stumbled into a nearby table. Plates rattled, a glass tipped over, and a server ducked just in time to avoid a collision. The attacker struggled to regain his balance, but Sarah's presence kept him restrained. One subtle pivot, one precise grip on his wrist, and he found himself gently guided to the floor, his attempts at resistance ineffective. His eyes widened as he finally registered the truth. This was no ordinary woman. His companion's earlier groans, the fluidity of her movements, and the control she wielded had all been warnings he had ignored. Now the realization hit him like a shockwave. He was completely outmatched. Patrons whispered among themselves, some holding phones, others frozen in awe. The restaurant, once filled with casual chatter, had transformed into a theater of precision and controlled chaos. Each movement Sarah made was purposeful, calculated, and deliberate, demonstrating her skills without unnecessary aggression. Her calm contrasted sharply with the attacker's frantic energy, underscoring the gap between discipline and recklessness. Then a subtle detail caught the attention of several patrons. Her jacket, slightly open, revealed the insignia of a Navy officer tucked under her bag strap. Gasps rippled through the room as the realization dawned. She wasn't just trained, she was elite. In that instant, everything clicked. The chaos, the precision, the authority, it all made sense. The three men had underestimated not just a woman, but a highly trained Navy officer capable of controlling any threat with efficiency and poise. The final attacker, now subdued, stared at her in disbelief, shaking slightly. His arrogance and confidence had been replaced with fear and respect. Sarah stood tall, breathing evenly, her eyes scanning the room one last time to ensure everyone's safety. 15 seconds of decisive action had turned potential disaster into complete control. In that short span, the attackers had learned a hard truth. Appearances can be deceiving, and underestimating someone like Sarah was a mistake they would never forget. The restaurant remained suspended in stunned silence for several heartbeats after the last attacker collapsed to the floor. Glass shards glimmered under the warm overhead lights, spilled drinks formed dark puddles on the polished hardwood, and overturned chairs created a chaotic tableau. Patrons whispered frantically among themselves, some frozen with awe, others filming the scene on their phones. Every eye was on Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, the calm center of a storm that had erupted and subsided within 15 seconds. Her breathing remained even, her posture unshaken, her gaze scanning the room with quiet authority. A few of the diners cautiously approached, offering tentative words of thanks and admiration. "Are you okay?" one young man asked, voice trembling. Sarah nodded politely, her tone soft but measured. "I'm fine. Everyone else?" She gestured subtly to ensure that patrons remained at a safe distance from the three subdued men. Relief rippled through the crowd as they realized no one had been seriously injured. The three attackers groaned, each groaning a mixture of pain and disbelief. The tallest man rubbed his bruised shoulder, while the second man struggled weakly to sit up. The third, still trembling, stared at Sarah as though seeing her for the first time, his earlier arrogance replaced with sheer terror. They were completely subdued, both physically and mentally, by a single woman whose casual appearance had concealed extraordinary skill and composure. A phone call broke the silence. Someone had already dialed 911. Within minutes, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as officers approached. The restaurant staff, still shaken but composed, directed the officers to the scene. Sarah stepped back, allowing the authorities to take control while offering clear, concise accounts of the events. Her statements were precise, factual, and free of exaggeration. Every movement, every word, reflected professionalism. Paramedics arrived shortly after, checking patrons and the subdued attackers for injuries. The three men were handcuffed and escorted outside, grumbling incoherently, their overconfidence replaced with humility born of shock. Sarah answered the officers' questions with a calm authority, noting the time sequence, the attacker's movements, and her response. Her ability to remain collected under scrutiny further impressed both the police and onlookers. Patrons began to murmur about what had just occurred. Many recorded short videos, some whispering incredulously, others visibly shaken by the rapid and decisive confrontation. Sarah, despite being at the center of attention, remained humble. She encouraged patrons to focus on safety rather than the spectacle. Waitstaff thanked her repeatedly, offering glasses of water and reassurance. Her professionalism and humility in the aftermath emphasized that her actions were not for recognition. They were simply the execution of skill and duty. News crews arrived quickly after bystanders reported the incident. Witnesses described a woman in casual clothing, calm and commanding, taking control in a matter of seconds. Several noted the Navy insignia visible under her bag strap. The story quickly gained traction on social media, spreading rapidly as the public marveled at the precision, courage, and composure she displayed. For many, it was a lesson in how appearances could be deceiving, and how extraordinary skill can lie hidden behind ordinary facades. As the restaurant slowly returned to normal, Sarah took a quiet moment at her table, sipping the remainder of her iced tea. The chaos, though temporary, left an impression not only on the attackers but on everyone who had witnessed it. Her mind ran through the sequence of events, reflecting on what had transpired, the potential for danger, and how rapid, deliberate action had prevented a disaster. The restaurant had survived intact, the patrons were unharmed, the aggressors subdued. In 15 seconds, the ordinary had become extraordinary, and the memory of Sarah Mitchell's courage lingered in every mind present. Hours later, the restaurant had quieted to its usual rhythm, though the memory of the evening's events lingered like a pulse in the walls. Sarah sat alone at her corner table, finishing the remnants of her iced tea, her posture calm, almost unreadable. Staff occasionally approached to check on her, but she waved them off politely, assuring them she was fine. Outside, the city carried on, oblivious to the extraordinary display of courage that had unfolded mere hours ago. Inside, though, everyone who had witnessed the confrontation replayed the scene in their minds, in awe of what they had seen. Social media had already exploded with eyewitness accounts. Short video clips circulated, showing Sarah moving with precision, subduing all three attackers in moments. Her face, calm and composed, was a contrast to the chaos surrounding her. "Who is she?" one post asked. "A Navy officer, apparently," another replied. The story gained national attention almost instantly. News outlets called to request interviews, eager to capture the perspective of the woman who had turned a potential disaster into composure and skill. Sarah's phone buzzed intermittently, colleagues checking in with messages of praise. Her squadron in the Navy reached out with pride, highlighting how training and discipline applied not only in combat but also in unpredictable civilian situations. The acknowledgement felt satisfying, though she remained humble. To her, the incident had been a matter of instinct, preparation, and doing what had to be done. She did not seek recognition, she simply acted. As she reflected, the memory of the 15 seconds replayed vividly. The initial shove, the quick calculations, the precise movements, the incapacitation of the first attacker, the controlled takedowns of the second and third, they all passed through her mind in detail. She analyzed her decisions, considering what went well and what could have been done differently, as any professional would. Each movement had been deliberate, each choice measured. It was both remarkable and routine, depending on the perspective. The patrons who remained behind continued to whisper among themselves. Some approached to express gratitude, others simply to marvel at the skill and control Sarah had exhibited. "I thought she was just another diner," one man admitted, shaking his head. "I didn't realize what I was witnessing until it was over." Sarah listened, nodding politely, acknowledging the admiration without letting it dominate her thoughts. She remained grounded, aware that while recognition was natural, the outcome mattered more than accolades. Even as the adrenaline of the evening faded, the lessons remained clear. Appearances were deceiving, courage often came in moments no longer than 15 seconds, and preparation could turn fear into mastery. Sarah's mind wandered to her fellow Navy officers, considering how training could translate into unexpected real-life heroism. She thought about civilians, about ordinary people who might face danger without knowing their own potential. The realization was humbling. Extraordinary action often emerges from ordinary circumstances. By the time Sarah left the restaurant, the story had reached multiple local news channels. Reporters hailed her as a hero, but she brushed aside the term, deflecting attention to the importance of awareness, preparation, and responsibility. Outside, the night air was cool, the city lights glittering in familiar patterns. She walked with measured steps, blending into the crowd as if nothing had happened, though the impact of her actions lingered in the minds of witnesses. Even as the restaurant emptied, the story of that night would continue to grow. For Sarah, it was a reminder of the quiet power of composure, precision, and discipline. For everyone else, it was a lesson. Never underestimate the ordinary, because behind calm exteriors may lie extraordinary skill and courage. In the end, heroism often arrives in the most fleeting of moments, leaving an enduring impression that outlives the event itself. The following morning, the story of Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell's 15-second heroism had spread far beyond the downtown streets. Social media posts, videos, and news articles painted a vivid picture of a woman who had subdued 3 attackers in a crowded restaurant with astonishing skill and composure. Her Navy training, once invisible beneath casual clothing, had become the centerpiece of national fascination. For many, it was a wake-up call. Appearances could deceive, courage could manifest in fleeting seconds, and discipline could transform potential disaster into triumph. The restaurant reopened, though patrons and staff alike felt the lingering echo of the previous night. Managers thanked Sarah privately, offering gifts and praise, though she accepted them with modesty. Her presence had not only neutralized a threat but had reminded the community of the quiet heroism that could emerge from anyone trained and prepared. Patrons who witnessed the confrontation shared their experiences widely, recounting every precise movement, every calculated decision, and every moment of calm command she had displayed. Meanwhile, the attackers faced legal consequences. Court dates were set, and charges of assault and intimidation were filed. Police reports emphasized the rapidity and effectiveness of Sarah's response, noting how quickly she had neutralized the threat without causing serious injury to either the attackers or the bystanders. Witness statements were unanimous in praising her professionalism, calm demeanor, and extraordinary skill. The men, once filled with arrogance, were now humbled, their actions serving as a cautionary tale of underestimating strength and capability hidden beneath an ordinary appearance. Sarah's story caught the attention of Navy leadership. Colleagues and superiors praised her actions as exemplary, highlighting the way professional training could translate to real-life situations outside military operations. She became a case study in situational awareness, quick decision-making, and controlled physical response. Her experience reinforced the Navy's emphasis on preparedness, calm under pressure, and adaptability, skills that saved lives in combat, and on that night in a civilian setting. Media coverage emphasized her humility. Interviews captured her focus not on recognition but on responsibility. Anyone trained to respond quickly could do this, she said, deflecting praise. It's about awareness, timing, and control. What matters is keeping people safe. Her words resonated with the public, inspiring articles, social media discussions, and local self-defense workshops. Many noted how heroism didn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it arrived silently, decisively, in moments lasting only seconds. The restaurant staff later held a small, informal ceremony, offering Sarah a token of gratitude. Patrons shared their stories and expressed admiration for her courage. Videos and photos circulated online, serving as both documentation and inspiration. For the community, she had become more than a hero of that evening. She was a symbol of calm authority, measured strength, and the extraordinary potential hidden within ordinary individuals. Reflecting quietly, Sarah understood the deeper lessons of the night. 15 seconds had been enough to alter outcomes, prevent injuries, and transform fear into respect. Preparation, clarity of thought, and decisive action had made the difference. She considered how often ordinary moments could reveal extraordinary courage if one remained trained, alert, and composed. Ordinary appearances could mask immense capability. Ordinary routines could suddenly demand extraordinary responses. By the time she returned home, the city's lights shimmered in the distance. The chaos of the restaurant, the fear of the attackers, and the awe of the witnesses remained vivid in her memory. Yet she walked calmly, blending into the evening crowd, unrecognized but impactful. The story would continue to spread, and its lessons would endure. Heroism is often quiet, rapid, and precise. Sometimes 15 seconds is all it takes to make the impossible happen, leaving an enduring mark on everyone who witnesses it.